phrase. And you can pretty easily find out whether or not you can extract as much information as possible in terms of that question. For example, this question in assessing the films of Japanese director have missed his equally deep engagement with Japanese artistic traditions such as Noh theater, convention of standard English. Can you tell me which aspect of English this is talking about?
I don't really remember that.
So this one is talking about, look, this one, basically we can see that in assessing the film of Japanese director, we can see that this is talking about modifier, right? Modifier is this one. So modifier is essentially modifying the word right next to it, right after it. So in assessing the films of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, is who or which object can assess the film of this person. I think the only thing can be accounted for assessment of a film of one director is the critics, right? So critics assess the films of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. So it can't be Kurosawa's use of Western literary. It can't be that. Also, it can't be there are, because there are is not the person that assessing the film. Remember, C and A is very mistakable. There are many critics who are focused. This is not the critics. Critics is not the word right after the modifier, but in this case is there are. Okay, D, the focus of many critics. This is going to be the focus. So A is the correct answer. All right, next up is 2. Can Lena do this for me? What did you say?
I chose C.
Okay, you chose C. Let's see. It's quite simple. This is quite simple. Director of the Language Revitalization Program of the Chickasaw Nation in Oklahoma, helped introduce the world's first indigenous language instructional app, Chickasaw Basic, in 2009. An online television network, Chickasaw TV, in 2010, and a Rosetta Stone language course in Chickasaw in 2015. All right, how did you do this? I think this is quite strange, but how did you do this?
Well, I see that they list many drug brands. After that, they also try that Rosetta Stone language course in Chickasaw and Holland in 2015. So, and before that, they also mentioned Chickasaw TV colon in 2010 is semicolon. So I think they so I think that the blank should be Chickasaw Basic colon in 2009 semicolon and online television network.
Okay, so when this is one of the keys in which I will teach you in order to save time on the SAT, because it's going to be very important. To save time on the SAT, you don't really read. You don't really read the prompt for easy questions. You have to read vertically. This is what we call a vertical scan. We scan from top to bottom, like this. We can see that the differences are in here, basic, and look, there's a difference in here. Secondly, here's a difference, And thirdly, here's the difference. You can see that they are structuring this question is in a way that we're going to have us differentiate between these 4 options. Here are the only differences. The same way for more difficult, in a more difficult English questions, we'd call it POE. But in a very simple grammatical question, we would call it a vertical scan, which is C. We can see that this is a list, obviously, but in this list, there's a comma. So normally, A separated by B, with B and C by a comma. This is the separation. But what if you put A, comma, A prime, which is like a supplemental clause for A. This is explaining what A means. A prime is explaining what A means. So how can you separate A and A prime with B and B prime, with C and C prime? You put it in between the semicolon here. I'm sorry. Here and here. Just like this question. First indigenous language instructional app, Jigsaw Basic, comma, in 2009, which is the A prime that is supplementing for the clause of A. And then semicolon B, which is in an online television network, Jigsaw TV, and B prime is here. And then C, which is in 2015, and C, this is C prime, and this here is C. So you get C. Very simple. We've already learned this, so that's just a brief introduction reminder. Okay, 3 and 4. I think I'm going to give it to Bike. 3 and 4.
C.
3 C and 4 is
C.
is it C or D?
C.
Okay, let me see. Firstly is 3. The 47 geothermal springs of Arkansas's Hot Spring National Park are sourced via a process known as natural groundwater recharge, in which rainwater percolates. Do we need to know what percolate means? No, we don't, because we're going to have to focus on the prompt. And the prompt is asking for standard English, so we don't really need to know everything. That would through the earth in this case. The porous rocks of the hills around hot something. Oh, here's the vertical scan, and the only difference is between these punctuations. Collect in a subterranean basin. So let's see. Back chose C. So springs to hot springs. This is correct, but actually I made a mistake here. So this is not an M dash. This is a dash. Okay, what's the difference between M dash and dash? Here is a dash. For example, Jean-Pierre is a dash. But what about M dash? M dash is just like a comma. And a dash is to link between two verbs, to linking verbs, or to linking nouns, to make a noun phrase. That is a dash. But when we come about M dashes, in this case is this one. It's actually a longer dash. This one, springs, a longer dash, 2. Collect in a subterranean basin. So what is the difference between this? M dashes, they are essentially used like a comma. You can use it to separate dependent clauses or incomplete clauses. And also it can do what comma can't, is to supplement a clause at the end of a sentence. You can't really do that with a comma. So you can't really choose D, but you have to choose C. When a comma is placed at the end of a sentence, mostly it's not to separate what's remaining. It's not to use to supplement what's remaining to the aforementioned, but it's used to separate. For example, you see this is a sentence, right? This finishes a sentence, but if a comma grammatically correct, if a comma appears here, it's going to complete the before comma. It's not going to kickstart another thing, but you're going to have to use it as an em dash. So you do not use a comma here to separate the very last line as a supplemental clause, but you're going to have to use an em dash, right? C, correct. 4, over 20 years ago, in a landmark experiment in the psychology of choice, Professor Shena set up a jam tasting booth at a grocery store. The number of jams available for tasting, jams is like a jelly, it's not like jam, water jams, available for tasting. The number of jams available for tasting varied. Some shoppers had 24 different options, others only have 6. Let's see. Back chose C. Let me check. Well, some shoppers had 24 different options, others only 6.
Oh, D.
Oh, you chose what?
No, I changed to D.
Okay, D. Let's see.
Mm.
The correct answer is A. Do you know why is it? Is it A? If you use while, it's going to have to use with an S plus V, while S plus V. The same thing go for if you move while to the front of a sentence. While here, S plus V, and then you're going to have to use a comma and an S plus V. Okay, this is a structure for a while. Whether it's in the middle of a sentence or it is moved to the beginning of a sentence, it stays the same structurally. So in this case, some shoppers had 24 different options. This is a verb, and this is a, I'm sorry, this is a subject, and this is a verb, and this is not a subject or a verb. This is a parallel structure, but it's not the structure of a while. Okay, so this has to be A. You got it? You got it?
Yes.
All right. Cool. Next up is 5. Can 5 and 6, let's just finish this off. 5, 6, 7. Hung, can you do this for me? 5.
5B.
5B, let me see. Logos of the kind of marriage. A kind of marriage. Television play. Okay. Nigerian author Buchi Edudis celebrated literary oath includes, fun fact, if you know French, you would know this means a work of art. Ode d'oeuvre includes The Joys of Motherhood, a novel about the changing roles of women in 1950s. Lagos, a kind of television play about the private struggles of a newlywed couple in Nigeria. And Head Above Water, her autobiography. Why do you think this should be a semicolon here?
Because if you read in the later part of the passage, it has the sort of same structure. Like after Nigeria, it used a semicolon, and then it mentions another another piece of art, I guess.
So, actually, that's correct. If you say it is parallel, but if you explain it in a way that makes it looks like a list, it's also correct, because that is essentially how Lina just did it. It's the same structure. Firstly, you have the comma, A prime, B prime, C prime. It's the same as that. You have the comma, include the joy, motherhood, a novel, something and something. This is supplemental for this. And then you have a kind of marriage, a television play about private struggle and newlywed. Again, the same structure. And lastly, her autobiography is the same structure, C prime. So that's why you chose B. Or if you think that they are not a list, but they parallel to each other, that's honestly works, because in itself, lists, they have to be parallel to each other. Right. Next up, 6.
6A.
Okay. Firstly, can you tell me what is the relationship between the before and after sentences?
The relation they have, the subjects both travels.
I'm sorry.
The subjects both travel. They both go somewhere.
That is not really a relationship of sentence. Firstly, can you tell me if this transition is in the beginning, in the middle, of at the end of a sentence?
At the beginning of a sentence.
Exactly. So if it is at the beginning of a sentence, you don't need to do anything else, but you just use this as is, and then you define the relationship of the before and the after sentences. But if it is in the middle, you're going to have to move it to the beginning, and you have to be sure that once you've moved, there's no run on. Okay. In this case, you don't really have to move. And you chose A, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, you chose A. So you said both things moves. A for Melu moves to the United States to attend a prestigious university. Binzi travels to London, hoping to start a career there. So this is what we would say as a parallel relationship. This is within the other section. Okay, meanwhile is a parallel relationship, but they are just phrased in a different way. If you remove the word meanwhile, it still makes sense. So next time, if you don't see the word meanwhile, but you see nevertheless, secondly, and in fact, and you the SAT won't give you an option like this, but let's say if it exists, okay, it will be phrased in different way, in a different question. But let's say if this one is phrased like this, you would understand that this would mean meanwhile, because meanwhile is a story, is telling a structured story. So this is essentially the same as not using any punctuation whatsoever, any transition whatsoever. Okay, very good. A and 7.
7B.
7B. Organisms have evolved a number of surprising adaptations to ensure their survival in adverse conditions. Tadpole shrimp embryos. Okay, for example. So this is just narrowing down. This is kind of a very easy question, so you don't really have to overcomplicate it by speaking out the relationship. But pay attention, this one is in the middle of a sentence. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is to move it to the beginning of a sentence, and then we assess the relationship between this one and this one. All right, so we rewrite the sentence as it to make it easier to understand. For more difficult questions, you're going to have to do this. You move the transition in the middle and you reread the entire sentence. You are allowed to reread if and only if it is a transition question and the transitional word is in the middle. Okay, 8. I'm going to save it for Gian, can you do this for me?
This is my first day in this class, so can you take me about a little time to read the question?
Yeah, sure. You can, yeah.
I think the best answer here should be D.
Okay, let's see. In 1933, the 20th Amendment to the US Constitution was ratified. The amendment mandates that presidential inaugurations be held on January 20th, approximately 10 weeks after the November election. Something. This amendment requires newly elected US senators and representatives to be sworn into their respective offices on January 3. So firstly, I think what we will do is to POE straight away because this is not too difficult to understand and we can clearly see there's no opposing relationship between these two sentences. So instead is wrong. And there are, for instance, is also wrong because this is not an example. For instance, is equal with, for example. B is wrong. Specifically, you're not narrowing down. This is something I call an equivalent clause. Here you can see that these two sentences, they share the same equivalence to each other. For example, you say she's walking and he is running. The two clauses, they are equivalent to each other. But if you say she is conducting a research and you say the research includes dissecting frogs, the latter part would be a subset of the first part. Okay, so the first part is bigger than the latter part. So she is conducting research is a bigger relation, a bigger clause than what I've said after. So in this case, I would use specifically, and that is how it's used. In this case, they are parallel and they are equivalent to each other. So I'm going to use in addition, right? Next up, 9 and 10. I'm going to ask Vink to do this.
9D.
9D. Okay, can you tell me why?
At the second sentence, it said she pays Thomas journeys, and in the last sentence, it said that she says those is even from her personal life, and I see that they are the same actions.
Okay, so they're equivalent to each other. So this is when we use similarly for the same reason as in addition. So it's D. Okay. Next up, 10. This one is quite strange, right? We've all learned it already. So can you tell me how you would do and approach the 10th question?
I will read the question first.
The question has two parts. This one is the paragraph, and this one is the prompt. Which one should you read?
The prompt.
Do you read this one? The paragraph? When you do this question, do you read the second part?
Yes.
No, to save time, you don't read the second part. Okay, you read the first part and then you use the technique we've learned, which is splitting questions. In this case, we can see that the students want to emphasize. Can you tell me what is specifically they're asking for in the prompt? What's the most important part?
Emphasize the distance.
Exactly, emphasize the distance. This is the requirement of the prompt. So we just POE from the first section of the question, which is the prompt. We only rely on the prompt and we go straight to POE. We don't really need to read this. It will be very time consuming. So we go straight to 3 and then we do POE. Can you POE it for me?
I choose A, the answer is A.
Okay, A, C connected to 62-mile long Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike connected to this Pennsylvania cities of this emphasize the distance. Okay, this is talking about when we talk about distance, we're going to need something that talks about distance because they're asking for it. So here, 62-mile long, but let's see B, C, and D if they have anything that's more precise. So we're going to narrow them down. the Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike were the first private turnpike. This is the wrong objection, the wrong focus. C, the Philadelphia Lancaster Turnpike, which connected to, this is the time, not the distance. D is also the time, talks about the time. So here you have specifically said that you're looking for a distance. So the only thing that we have to look for in the prompt, in the answers, is precisely distance. Okay, A. Very good. Now we're going to jump onto practice 12, and then I'm going to move on a bit more quickly this time, so that we're going to be able to approach the most important part of today's lesson, which is time management. In a sec, let me just look for 12. This one will be a bit more difficult because the 13th was a bit more focused on the grammar side of the SAT, and we can easily see that the very last 5 or 6 questions are the questions about the grammar. Okay, so more on that later, but firstly we go to test 12, and I'm going to ask Lina to do this.
Choose A.
A, can you tell me what is the conclusion?
The conclusion is that cattle were likely raised closer to human settlements, whereas sheep and goats were allowed to roam farther away.
Okay, this is the conclusion. So the same way we approach things last question, which is to find out the keys. Okay, so find what the keys are. And obviously you're going to have to read the entire thing, but I've read it already, so I'm not going to waste your time anymore. And here is talking about closer to human settlements, where sheep and goats were allowed to roam farther away. So that's basically our main focus. Analysis of the animal bones show that the cattle diets also consist of wheat, which human widely cultivated in China during the Bronze Age. So the cattle using humans' food. Let's see B, diet. This is looking for the diet humans widely cultivated. Further investigation of sheep and goat bones reveal that their diets consisted of a small portion of millet as well. So we're going to here largely millet, what the cattle's diet consisted. So this is contradictory to the finding, right? So it can't have been using the same kind of food with the cattle's. So B is pretty much wrong. Cattle's diets generally require a larger amount of food and greater variety. This is wrong. This is obviously the wrong focus point. Cattle, we are looking for what indicates that cattle, they are closer to human, and sheep and goats, they're farther away. They're not as close to humans. So A is good, B, and the C is the greater variety. There's nothing relatable here. D, the diets of sheep, goats, and cattle were found to vary based on what the farmers could grow. So this is also wrong. This is not emphasizing what the cows have. The cattle's they have, and what the sheep's don't. So this one says that the cattle's, they have wheat. Human which is the popular food that made by human. So it's A. Okay. Next up is 2. Dom, can you do this for me?
I choose C.
Okay, C. Do you still remember how you did this?
No. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's just have a brief reread of this because you've done this before the SAT exam, the August exam, so that's pretty easy to forget. But let's just give a reread and let's see how you did it. This were large marine reptiles that lived in the lake this period. Approximately 100 million to 66 million years ago, Ceratosaurus, Alberto Perez Huerta, and T. Lin Harold Jr. examined oxygen-18 isotopes in mosasaur tooth enamel in order to calculate likely mosasaur body temperatures, and determined that mosasaurs were endothermic. That is very important. This is how you're going to understand very complicated passages. This is actually a quite difficult question. That's why I'm asking you to explain it, but let's have a reread, okay? This is why this is difficult, because there are loads of different jargon, scientific jargons here. So firstly, what is isotope? What is endothermic? So what the things that make the words important is actually the definition that if it gives. So this one is they used internal metabolic processes to maintain a stable body temperature in a variety of ambient temperatures. So you can see that endothermic is the key word here. That's why they're emphasizing it. That's why they taking an extra step to actually explain how this means. So endothermic is about an animal that is not affected by the outside environment. The temperature, the inner temperature is constant, okay? Like humans, it's 37 degrees. So whereas this claim that endothermy would have enabled more mosasaurs to include relatively cold polar water in their range. So again, the finding, if it's true, would support Suarez this and this claim. The claim here is to enable mosasaurs to include relatively cold polar water in their range. So we're going to look for what is supported inside of this claim. Mosasaur likely body temperature are easier to determine from tooth enamel than the body temperature of non-endothermic plates. Body temperature easier to determine. This word is quite wrong. It doesn't differentiate from mosasaurs, including cold polar waters. This is just a difficulty. It's not related. POE. So B, fossils of both mosasaurs and non-endothermic marine reptile have been found in roughly equal numbers in regions known to be near the poles during the late Cretaceous, though in lower concentration than elsewhere. So this one is quite difficult to understand, so I'm going to skip to D first. During the late Cretaceous, I don't really understand that one. Late seawater temperatures were likely higher than throughout mosasaur's range, including near the poles, than seawater temperatures at those same latitude are today. This one is, let's see, endothermy would have enabled this animal, to include relatively cold polar water in their range. So it can move up to colder environments like the poles. Okay, so it can't be D because it's directly comparing. Yes, exactly. It can't be D. It's directly comparing the temperature from historic age and here and today. It's not really the main focus of whether or not this dinosaur or this animal can move up north or in the colder water. So it's not C. B and C. It's not D. Several mosasaur fossils have been found in regions known to be near the poles near the poles. While relatively few fossils of non-endothermic marine reptile have been found. Yes, this one is what we're looking for. Okay, so how about B? I don't really understand B, but I'm sure C has a higher chance of being correct. So I have used POE to cross out A and D for a difficult question like this. That leaves me with B and C. B, I don't really understand, so I'm going to continue to D and C. So I read D and read C, and I see D. I see that D is obviously wrong because the main focus is not whether or not this animal can move to the pole, but this is talking about the water temperature prior and today. So it's wrong. That's C. Okay, very good. Next up, 3. How about, oh, can you do this for me?
3D.
3D. Can you tell me what is the hypothesis?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat, please?
Can you tell me what is the hypothesis?
The
The
hypothesis
hypothesis?
is that
Yes.
a decline in the population of dusky sharks near the mid-Atlantic coast of North America led to a decline in the population of eastern oyster in the region.
Okay. So in condense, we just going to condense this information as follows. A decline in the population of a decline led to a decline, okay, of the dusky shark to the eastern oysters. Dusky sharks do not typically consume eastern oyster, but do consume cow-nosed rays, which are the main predators of the oysters. Which finding, if true, would most likely directly support the researchers' hypothesis. Firstly, declines in regional abundance of dusky shark's prey other than cow-nosed rays are associated with the regional declines in dusky shark abundance. Look, this one, dusky shark, and it's about dusky sharks and Easter oyster. So we can visualize the relationship like this. Dusky shark, it's good for Eastern oysters because look, a decline led to a decline. So we can understand the relationship between these two. But dusky shark do not typically consume Easter oysters, but do consume cow-nosed rays, which are the predators. Predators are the animals that eat other animals. In this case, cow-nosed rays, these animals, they eat the oysters. So it will be bad for the cow nose. Okay, here is the relationship. And we can see that this is not decline other than cow nose rays this is not precisely the hypothesis. We are trying to look for the oyster conclusion. So this is about dusky shark and cow nose rays, so it doesn't matter. B, Eastern oyster abundance tends to be greater in areas with both dusky sharks and cow-nosed rays than in areas with only dusky sharks. So this is wrong because this should be less, okay? So B is wrong. C, consumption of Eastern oysters by cow-nosed rays in the region substantially increased before the region decline in dusky shark abundance began. Consumption of Easter oysters by cow-nosed rays in the region substantially increased. This consumption before the decline in dusky shark abundance began. So this increase, let's see D first. Cow-nosed rays have increased in regional abundance as dusky sharks have decreased in regional abundance. Cow-nosed rays have increased in abundance. So this increases when this dude decreases. The research hypothesis. Or C, consumption Eastern oysters by cow-nosed rays increased before the regional decline in dusky shark. Oh. I think C and D, they're quite the same. Consumption of Eastern oysters by cow-nosed rays. This is consumed by this one. And the region substantially increased before the regional decline in dusky shark. So wait, this one declines, dusky shark decline. Before the regional decline in dusky shark abundance began. The decline. This dude. Oh, so this one is saying that the consumption of Eastern oysters increases because the dusky shark decreases. No, it should be that dusky shark, it consumes cow nose rays. It doesn't relate to, it doesn't directly consume, look, dusky shark do not typically consume eastern oysters, but do consume cow nose rays. So C is wrong, okay? So it leaves us with D. All right, yeah. Almost made it wrong there. Next up, 4. Right, can you do this for me?
Number 4 is, let me, number 4 is C.
Okay. Focusing on, firstly, can you tell me what was the claim by the people who favor the traditional view of this dish?
Mm,
Here, isn't it? Voting in an election does not change a voter's attitude toward the candidates in that election. Focusing on each year's presidential election from this test, testers the claim by distinguishing between subjects who have just become old enough to vote and otherwise similar subjects who were slightly too young to vote, and thus none of whom voted. Washington and this compared the attitude of the groups of subjects toward the winning candidates of two years after each election. So it's comparing within the election and outside of the election. Let's see. Subjects' attitude toward the winning candidate 2 years after given. We're looking for something that does not change. Let's see. Strongly predicted by the subject's general political orientation, regardless of whether subjects were old enough to vote at the time of the election. Strongly predicted by subjects' general political orientation. A subject who were not old enough to vote in a given election held significantly more positive. Okay, this is wrong because this is a change of attitude. B, wrong. Who voted in a given election held significantly more polarized attitude toward the winning candidate 2 years later than did subjects who were not old enough to vote for that in that election. So this is quite the opposite of this one, isn't it? Does not. Oh, weaken. All right. C is weaken. This is precisely what we're looking for. A is supporting this this claim, and D, how about D? 2 years after a given election, subjects who voted and subjects who were not old enough to vote were significantly more likely to express negative attitude. So this one is also not related to the experiment. Is testing between whether or not they change the opinion, not how polarized or not how positive or negative they are. Okay, D is wrong. So it's C. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to talk a bit about the time management skill because it's frankly taking a bit of time to do these kind of questions. I'm going to carry on with today's lesson and we can fix this later. And I'm going to share the PowerPoint. All right. Hưng, can you see the screen, the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So today I'm going to have to focus something, the most important thing on the SAT, of course, as I've mentioned already. So why am I teaching you this first? You have to have this skill in mind before doing anything. You have to manage your time. Before doing anything, I'm going to have to introduce to you, because this is the final stage of the SAT. I am expecting you to do more than just your homework. finishing your homework is just the baseline of your success. And if you want to grasp higher score, you're going to have to do in accordance to these resources. So here are the resources that I have published and or going to publish on the class's book inventory. So these are the sources that I would recommend ranking from top to bottom. Firstly, you can open the folder in our classroom and you can see the books and also the compilations and everything. Everything you need to know about the SAT is there. You don't really need to look elsewhere, and everything you need is there because I have hand selected them. I know what's best. And firstly, I rate Khan Academy online, which is the website khanacademy.com, is the best source to practice the SAT, but it is not the best source to learn for the SAT. Keep that in mind because Khan Academy explanations, they aren't consistent with the SAT skills, right? Next up is Erica Meltzer book. I've uploaded already, and she has published the 5th or the 6th edition of her book, which is about the digital essay writing. And I have taken some of her advices throughout the lesson, but the most importantly is how she gives out practice tests very close to the actual SAT because she is actually a specialist in this field, right? So I would suggest you use this book as a practicing resources, and everything you need to know about the SAT, you've already known it already. You're just going to have to use much of these resources to further to hone in your skills, to strengthen your ability. That's what you're going to need to do. You don't really need to learn anything further, but you need to practice it and eliminate the bad habits as much as possible. All right. Next up is the Vibrant books. There are 2 books I've uploaded. Firstly is the practice test, and secondly is the reading writing. Both are good, but remember, this is a third-party vendor, so they make their own lessons, they make their own tests, so it won't be as representative of the SAT. But you should take it with a grain of salt. But you should only do it if you've run out of resources already, like Khan Academy and also Erica Meltzer book. And also next up is PSAT practice test. What is PSAT? You can open up on the Blue Book app and you can, instead of choosing the SAT, you choose the PSAT. This is the preliminary SAT, which is a more easier version of the SAT because you know SAT is actually the 12th grade test, and PSAT is for 10th grade. That's the only difference. So what different is the number of questions, the time allocated for each question, and also the difficulty. They won't have the most difficult question on the SAT, but it still have the easy and the medium question on the SAT. That's where the difference ends. And everything's basically the same. It's from the same company. It's the same format. It's the same skills, everything like such. Remember, this is like a preliminary SAT, so it's preparing you for the SAT. So it's there are like 2 or 4 practice tests that you can follow, and then you can use it extensively on the Blue Book app. And next up is the Princeton book. Obviously, this is it has just been released the digital version, and I've read it extensively. And I can see that Princeton is one of the most difficult books on the SAT that the SAT can give you. So it's not really representative of your actual score, all right? So do not do these for practice or for examining yourself, to evaluate yourself. Do not do it. But if you want to practice your test, if you want to learn vocabulary, start now, all right? Learn the Princeton book, download it, and look for new words as much as possible, as many new words as possible, and then you can go from there. All right, from now on, this month and this month only, you have to focus on every single new words that you encounter because it will add up. For example, today and tomorrow, it won't matter too much, but the next day and the day after, it will be a significant change, and then on 7th of October when you're taking the exam. It will be when your hard work shine. Okay, so try your best to not skip one, even any kind of new word that you don't understand, because the SAT is frankly very repetitive, and the new words, you don't need to look elsewhere. You don't need to read any books, anything, any newspaper. You have to read on the SAT, and new words, they lie within the SAT. It will be repeating throughout. So I used to be one of the people who just tried my best to learn new words, but ended up wasting bunch of days. Yeah, so I stopped it before I could waste any further, because remember, I only had 2 months to prepare for the SAT, and then I scored it. I went from 1290 to 1590 in duration of 2 months. So time is invaluable for me. So now you guys have 3 months, so 1 month more than I did. So try to use it your best to not learn vocabulary solely. Okay, learn vocabulary as you are learning the SAT. You do them simultaneously. Next up is SAT practice test. You redo the practice test as many times as possible, because on the SAT it will be adaptive. So 2 times, like when your level or when your ability improves, the test will become a bit harder, just like playing video games. It'll become harder, and there are no 2 exams will be the same. And practice test 1 and 2, for example, I've given you the first 2 practice tests to do as a measurement, and you can redo them as many times as you like until you reach 1600 and you never get a mistake again. That's simple, that's good, but only if you have run out and exhausted the aforementioned resources already, because look, we only have 4 practice tests, so try to save it. And do not do the 3rd or the 4th practice test unless I told you so. All right. Next up is the final part is Khan Academy writing compilation. This is for the paper SAT, and also the because it's for the paper SAT, it won't be representative of the actual SAT. But I still have a lot of homework as a paper SAT, but writing section only, because you can learn vocabulary, you can learn the skill of reading, and you can learn time management when doing these questions and when doing these compilations, right? So I've sent you the homework beforehand, before the deadline. Like, you have a week to do this, so try your best not to skip anything. I have crossed out some difficult questions on before August SAT, but now our goal is to focus on doing everything. Don't leave anything behind, and you have to understand everything, because remember, mathematics is not your problem right now. All of you have gotten more than 780 already, so I'm very proud of you for that. And some of you have gotten an 800 on the SAT quite some times now. So I would expect you guys to not skip on maths entirely, but to maintain your ability. Right. Next up will be the structures and categories. Categories firstly by skills. And what is the skills? There are 4 major categories, and then there are like 1 to 10 subcategories. Firstly is the information and ideas. It is, well, these skills I would not consider as difficult or as easy anymore, because there are difficulty scale in parallel to these specific skills. For example, there are easy questions for central ideas and details, there are medium question, and there are even difficult questions. So you can't really prioritize one thing over the other anymore. Every single 10 of these sub skills, they will have an easy, a medium, and a hard kind of question. So I will give you some example of an easy, medium, and difficult question later in the lesson, and I'll upload it to the classroom repository. But firstly, you're going to know some tricks, because I've tried to guide it. I've tried guiding my student before, and I see that by applying these rules, you can almost certainly have from 7 to 11 7 to 10, 11 minutes left on the reading writing section. So that will be very good. If you have like 5 minutes, that's okay. But the thing we want to avoid is exhausting your time before actually doing, for example, like you're gonna be panicking when finishing the SAT because, well, you haven't finished it and time is running out. We're going to have to eliminate that scenario, and we're going to have to focus on doing the SAT on time, not only on time, but having 10 minutes to spare, all right? So you're gonna have to grasp all of these structures in mind and know that everything has its own difficulty, easy, medium, and hard. Next up is the timing scheme. Firstly, you're going to have to know the module. In order for you to perfect the time management, you have to understand the SAT at the back of your hand, all right? Firstly is the timing scheme. There are 2 modules in each section. Firstly, reading, writing. There's the first section, which is 27 questions, but the second module, it will be adaptive. So if you think the second module is, well, it's way harder than the first module, that means it has adapted to your ability and it knows you are doing well on the first module. That's why it's going to be progressively harder for you to do, because it's intentionally placing harder, more difficult questions on module 2, because actually you've done great. Not like you're running out of time and you're panicking that you can't do the module 2. No, it's actually College Board, it's actually the SAT that's organizing the questions so as to increase difficulty for you because you've done so great. Next, you're gonna have 10 minutes break and do it. Do not use your phone, anything like such. That's for your property to say, but for me, I would suggest you to always drink water in this 10 minutes break. Before the test, in 10 minutes break, and yeah, you'll do great. Next up is Maths 1 and Maths 2. The same thing goes for Maths 1, 2. The first one will be linear, which will mean that everybody's the same. The second one, starting for the second one, it will be adaptive. That means it's going to be progressively harder or progressively easier. Next up will be, here's a trick about the reading and writing section, and you're going to have to take this in mind. Everybody pay close focus to these lines. The SAT is organized in the order of difficulty, but separated by skills. And secondly, the category skills are not organized in this order. Remember these two lines, right? This is very important. And these 2 lines, these lines are the definition or are the deciding factor of whether or not you are losing your time or you are having 10 minutes to spare, right? These 2 lines. Allow me to elaborate with a graph. Let's say you have 27 different questions, each ranging from information and ideas, craft and structure, and standard English convention. And I am annotating the green ones are the easy ones. The yellow ones will be the harder, the medium, and the red are insatiably hard, okay? So how are we going to approach this? Simple. Remember, they will be grouped, okay? Firstly, for example, from 1st to 6th will be information and idea. So it will always be from start to the first question of information and ideas will always be the easiest, and the last question of information and ideas will always be the hardest. And next up is craft and structure. And next up is expression of ideas. And lastly is standard English convention. I want you to pay close attention to this one. Standard English convention. Why is it? Because this, even how difficult it is, it will always be easy, because this is what we would consider as a writing section on the paper SAT, and this is what we consider as a grammar section on the new SAT. It's very simple, just punctuation and modifiers and everything like such, and subject, verbs, agreements, and run-ons and things like that. Standard English convention. And the special thing is, it will always be at the last of a test. So you can take, for example, a practice test, open it up, the practices that you've done already, and you skip to the very last questions, like 10 or 11 questions, last questions, and you can see that the very last question, it will be very easy, and they will fall into the category of standard English convention. How can you know which is which? I'm going to give you a file later on so that you can know which one is within which skill. But right now, bear with me as I walk you through how you can approach and how you can save time. Right, firstly, let's say I am doing question 1. I'm going to use my pen. I'm doing question 1. I'm here. I am at question 1. And right now I'm doing this, and I can do this, and I can do this also, but I'm not very good at information and ideas. So what can I do? I think question 4 is too difficult, but I can do question 5. I have done question 5 already. 3 and 5. I've done this already. So how about 6? Should I try to do the 6 also, or should I just skip? Well, I just do it, figure, because if 6 is as easy as 5, that wouldn't waste too much of my time, right? So I do 6. As I was reading through 6, I think, yeah, it's very close, and I'm getting the answer already. But I just need some like 10 more seconds to do this one. Yeah. But that is the dead mistake that you're going to make, because when you think you're going to need 10 more seconds, you're going to need 20 more seconds. No, don't do it. Skip straight to the next question, because look, oh wow, the very 7th question, it's going to be a giveaway for you. You don't really need to think, you just need to read the prompt and then you answer immediately. Won't 6 waste a bunch of your time because you think it's easy, but in actuality, it's one of the most difficult SAT questions of all. Okay, so you do 7, and you skip 6 and you do 7, and you return. You remember how I taught you that, well, you skip if you don't know what to do. So you do 7 and then you do 8 and then you do 9. I can do 9 now because, well, I have the extra confidence boost because I have done like 5 correct answers already. So I'm going to keep the streak and I'm going to do it well. So 9 to 10, but 11 is quite difficult. So I'm jumping to 12, but because I have somewhat known, because this 12th question is a poem and I can do a poem. So I did it. So next up is 13, but it's too difficult. I'm going to skip it and skip 14 also because, well, this is it. I don't know how to do this anymore. And voila, you get 15 and 16. These are very simple, and these are some of the most easiest question of all on the SAT. So you do 15 and you do 16 in under 30 seconds. And next you do 17 in just 15 seconds. And then you skip these 3, because, well, you're not going to waste time on things you don't know, because this is big picture and this is asking for you, well, for example, cross a paired paragraphs. Paired paragraphs is very difficult, and these 3 questions, they're asking for the same thing. So I don't think I can do it. So skips right to 21 and 23. And what do I see? This is standard English convention. And what does that mean? That means I have finished the gruesome, or no, I'm not the gruesome, sorry. I have successfully endured the difficulty of the SAT, and from now on, it will be very easy onward. From question 21, because this is within standard convention, it will finish with the standard English convention. Okay, so remember, recap, everything is grouped. If it's talking about information and idea, if you know that the first question is talking about information and idea, the second and the third will most likely to be the same category. And the 4th, the 5th, the 5th, and until you find something about craft and structure. Okay, it resets the scale and it returns to the easiest question. Remember, they're grouped as a whole, but they will be sorted from easiest to most difficult. But if you are carefully and if you have understood this well enough, you're not doing this from the beginning. How can I just erase everything? Let's see. You're not just doing from 1 to 27. what do? You do from 21 to 27. Why is it? Why is it that you do from 21 to 27? Because remember, some people, some of my students even, they are not really the best test takers. So they have been some of the best students I've ever had. For example, the last dude who's got 1500. So he's not really the person who's stable in every exam. He's very worried. He's very worrisome in his. He gets panic all the time. Why is it? Because, yeah, that's who he is. So what is my advice for those who are not, who are very scared or who is very like unprepared mentally about when the SAT comes, and when you find yourself being very scared and fearsome of the SAT when you're taking the SAT, within the when you're sitting the SAT even, try to find the easiest question of all, so that because when you finish doing the last 7 questions, you can gain your focus, you can improve on your focus, and then you can improve on your confidence. After finishing the last 6, you can see that doing the first last 7, you can see that doing the first 20 questions will be remarkably easier and remarkably faster. Okay, next time, everyone in my class, do the last questions first. Do the standard English convention first before jumping to any other kind of questions or skills, right? And remember, they are ranged from easiest to hardest in each skill. So if you don't think you can do it, skip and try to find the next easiest question. And try, because these green boxes aren't just easy. They will give you the most points. And the red boxes, at most, it won't subtract any points from you. For example, some like Hung, he did one practice test quite like a week ago, and he got 99% right. He made one mistake, but he got an 800 on the math section. Why is it? Because he made a mistake in what the SAT would consider as a difficult question in a difficult skill. So although he loses one question, he loses 0 point. That's how it went, right? So remember, it's not about whether or not you do the most questions correct, but whether or not you do the most easiest question correct. Try to do your best to do the things that you can do. Yes. So next time, if you do the SAT, don't try to go from 1 to 27 right away. Go from 27 onward and pause where the standard English convention ends. And also rhetoric synthesis. Because this is the kind of question that we have encountered, like you have some dots, some notes from students, like Ving just did earlier in this lesson session. Some dots, and then they ask for something, and then when they ask for notes, that's rhetorical synthesis. And I'm going to give you some way to kind of realize or kind of categorize your questions. Okay. Yeah, that's the end of the slideshow, and I'm going to discard this. That's basically everything you need to know when it comes to time management. What's next? I'm going to present to you my book of here. I'm just going to share the entire screen. All right. Firstly, you have this. I'm going to upload this to Classroom later, but firstly, you can see the easy questions by skills. This one is difficulty is 1/3. Skill is form, structure, and sense. Domain, standard English convention, reading, writing, and SAT. You can see it's very simple. Radiation, that, something. And here, everything is very simple, right? This is about central ideas and details. And even this is within the domain of information and ideas, and this is testing your skill of big picture, details, central ideas, it's still very, very, very easy because difficulty is 1/3. All right. Next up is this one. Also, it's very easy. Command of evidence. It needs for you to look for quantified identities, which means you need to look for graphs, look for numbers, look for proofs. But it's still very easy because this is within the first category of difficulty. Look, let's do let's do this one. I'm going to ask Lina to instantly do this for me. Is Lina there? Okay, can you do this for me on the spot? Just give it a read, and everybody read this one and then type in the chat section what your answer is, because this is a very easy question. Let's see if you got it right. I'm going to give you like 1.5 minutes to do this.
To C.
Lina chose what?
C.
C. Okay, before I explain this question and see if Lina is correct, I'm going to ask everybody to text me your answer in the chat box, of course. Is it taking that long, or haven't you typed anything? Okay, I see his thing. All right, Kian, next. Okay, this thing. Thumb and back, how about you? All right. Right, you do it. Have you sent it? What's your answer to this question?
C.
Okay, so everybody unanimously chose C, and let's see if you guys are correct. Yeah, it's C. Not too surprising, is it? Because, well, to be honest, it's not too difficult. But the good thing is you guys did it within time frame. Well, it's not really quick. Whether or not it is because you're not paying close attention enough, or you're just not typing it out instantly when you got the result. But I can see that C is the correct answer, not because it is time consuming, but it's you need to look specifically, or you need to pay close attention. Okay, so I am thinking about Ving because you are the person who loses focus on reading the paragraphs. That's why I want you to, when read it, try to move your cursor along your eye line, because I find that when you do your questions, you have a tendency to do it quite accurately, but when you do the exam, it takes time. That's why you're losing points on more complicated kind of questions like information and ideas. So for these kind of standard English convention, it's very simple. But for such questions like this, Ving, and also let's say Bike, I can see Beck haven't done lots of practice tests yet, but I can see that you loses focus quite easily. So I want you guys to focus on reading. When before every time you read, try to take a deep breath before reading, and then focus 100% like as if your life depended on it, right? So next time when you read, try to put your mind to read. Try to read more than just with your eyes, with your hand, your cursor, with your mouse or something, and then try to do your best, all right? These are very simple, and don't let them lose your points. And also, I think in general, time management skill is wasted much on Lina because your accuracy is quite good, almost 90-ish, 100%, because you can do it in if and only if you do it in an unlimited time frame. So when we put everyone together within 35 minutes of time constraints, okay? Everybody only have 35 minutes to do the SAT reading. So if I give you infinite time for you to do your homework, it's good. You guys can do it exceptionally. But when I put you in a 35 minutes time frame, I can find that your reading and writing skill, they are not correlating to your knowledge, your ability, and to what I've observed performance-wise. So what I want you to focus next time, and every single time that you do, time yourself. Even for homework, even for everything, even for just one exercise only, time yourself to see if you can do this any quicker than you're already doing, right? Try to improve your time management, because there's a reason why I teach this as the very first skill in reading and writing for the October SAT. It's because this is the most fundamental, is the most important skill of all. Why is it important? Because it preps your mind. If you do the first question correctly and in time, you do the second question correctly and in time, and you do the third one quite as well, right? If you do the first one and you already struggle with the first one, it's not because you're not having the ability or you're not having the knowledge. You're choosing the wrong question to start off with. Next time, every time, do standard English convention before everything. All right, and then do the easiest question, not because they are categorized as something easy, but it is at the beginning of each skill. Just like diagram I showed you, like this one, all right? Just like this diagram, you need to look for the easy questions. You need to look for the greens, and then you will progress to the yellow and then to the red, not the other way around. You don't do the red and you don't stuck at the sixth question. Instead of stucking at the fifth and the sixth question, you're trying to do 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 15, 16, 21 to 27. And I can guarantee you get 1400 plus if you do this and you follow the time management skill. Okay. The only difference between the 1300 and the 1450 is the time management and your understanding of the test. And between 1450 to 1520 is simply word in context or your vocabulary, right? And higher than 1520 will be the perfection of absolutely every single skill that I've taught you, and you do it hand in hand and almost like a second nature, almost like as if you understood it and as if you have done it so many times already, it's become already or automated, and that is how you achieve great scores. Okay. So next time, even if you're stuck in at the 1400 score, try to focus and fix time management first. And then I can see that 1500 is not very difficult. It's quite easy if and only if you know where to look for it. You don't look for 1500 at the 6th or at the 90th or at the 20th question. You look for the 1500 at the 4th and the 5th and the 9th and the 10th question in this question frame. Okay, so consider SAT as something of a whack-a-mole. You find something that's at odd, you hit it, and then you score. You find your question, and you hit it and you score. You don't do it from 1 to 27. You do it selectively, and I suggest you do from 21 to 27 first, which is done standard English convention first, and then do the rest as accordingly. Obviously from easiest to hardest, okay? And that's very important. That can seem very easy at first, but it is quintessential at you actually scoring high versus scoring low. So that's what I want to emphasize for the rest of this session. Actually, I've gone 3 minutes overboard, but anyway, for the rest of this session. So your focus here onward is to manage your time. Do not let it go to waste, because why should you do your homework correctly 100% or you do your practice test awfully? No, you shouldn't do that. You have to do the other way around. The only people who are not gifted in taking the exam, they're not fully prepared in taking the exam. It's not because they some sort of luck involved. Luck is only 20% of your score. No, 20 points of your score, I'm sorry. And everything else, you have to build it yourself. All right. So basically, essentially, and fundamentally, that's time management on the SAT, and you understand how difficult it is to actually perfect it. So start from tomorrow onward, try to focus on actually fixing your time management. And then the next time I will focus on fixing the next skill of yours, which is vocabulary in context, word in context, or learning vocabulary. All right. So do you guys have any more questions for today's session? Okay. I've seen that you
Will-
guys have, what was that?
Will the 31st to 27 question always be English language something? Will always
Yes, it will.
be
The
like
last
that.
questions will always be standard English convention. Always, right? So you can check it. You can go back to your previous practice test and you can see the very last questions at the each module will always be standard English convention. Will always be commas and grammar, things like that. Will always be easy. Okay. Do you guys have any more questions? So if you don't have any more questions, I will upload the PDFs for categorizing like the easy and the medium and the difficult questions for each skill so that you can grasp, you can get the sense of what difficult questions are. And then and that will conclude our class for today. And I'll see you guys again very soon. Later.